I can sit here today and tell you, based upon every brief that was filed and based upon every Supreme Court decision, that I should have never been in jail, and that every court avoided their responsibility and did not follow the law.
A pretty bold statement, but Dr. Richard I. Fine will back it up with alarming and irrefutable proof of the corruption in our California state justice system. Coming up next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're bringing you the news behind the news in this part 2 of our home interview with Dr. Richard I. Fine. We asked him to explain how he first discovered the corruption that he's been fighting for the past decade. He said it started with an insidious and barely discernible resistance to his litigation efforts.
The resistance began in 1999, and it began in the, I can literally pinpoint it, the first resistance that I didn't recognize began in 1998 after I won the case with respect to stopping the $100 million going from the MTA into the county and the county being able to borrow $150 million from the MTA. And I lost it in the Court of Appeal because an LA Superior Court judge was on the Court of Appeal. But at that point, I figured, okay, I just lost a case. So it didn't strike me as anything. Then the next case was in the fall of 1999, was a case of the district attorney withholding $14 million of child support money. Now, usually it's the fathers, or nowadays it's also the mothers if they're earning more money, pay into the child support fund. The district attorney takes that money and then distributes it. He has to distribute it within 6 months. The district attorney was holding that money up to 2 years. We proved that, and the district attorney's person got on the stand and said that they admitted to doing it, and then the judge dismissed the case.
The judge dismissed the case even though the county admitted its wrongdoing. Something fishy going on here?
This is when I began to find out what was happening, because then I found out that the judges were getting paid money by the county. And when I raised that, this case was called Silva versus Garcetti. When I raised that in the appellate court brief, the appellate court said to me, well, you're raising this too late. You should have raised it in the trial court. And I responded, I said, they kept it a secret. It was concealed. Nobody knew about it. There's no way we could do it. They said, tough luck. I then found out that one of the appellate court justices, Justice Doy Todd, had been a former Superior Court judge, and she had received that money, and she didn't disclose it. So now I began to see the light.
Dr. Fine was in the middle of a class action case, the DeFlores case, which settled for $7.86 million. Under the final judgment, his law firm was supposed to receive approximately $2 million. For some reason, there was resistance from the court, preventing the payment of the judgment.
The man who was in the case, a man called Commissioner Mitchell, Bruce E. Mitchell, who was actually in the case only for pretrial things, stayed on the case even though he wasn't supposed to. And he went in on a whole campaign to remove me from the case and doing all these other things. And then he ended up stopping the payments, stopping the classes in a number of other cases that I was involved in.
And so Commissioner Bruce E. Mitchell began working to financially ruin Dr. Fine.
He had two positions. He was a commissioner, but he was sitting as what we called a judge pro tem, or a temporary judge, in the class action department for pretrial things, and also in the eminent domain department. Now, the eminent domain department is that department in the Superior Court that handles all the cases when you're coming in to take public land or private land for public purposes. And Mitchell was getting this particular money. And so what they did is they started in a campaign to try and economically kill me. And they literally went in through all these cases. They literally went in and froze out all my income from 1996 all the way through that time period, through the 1999 time period. that amounted, as far as gross fees were concerned, it amounted somewhere around $6 to $7 million.
Dr. Fine squared off with Commissioner Mitchell, who retaliated with the full might of the court.
I tried to disqualify him for not being the correct judge in the case and not following the rules, the local rules and everything else. He then ended up holding me in contempt for disqualifying him. And he did that without my being present. That was on September 24th, 2001. That went into the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals upheld that contempt, and I was supposed to go to jail for 5 days. I went into the California Supreme Court, who once again denied, refused to hear the case. I went into the U.S. District Court it was in June, and in August 12th, the U.S. 2002 we're now up to, the U.S. District Court came out with the order staying in the execution of sentence and ordering what we called an order to show cause as to why they should not immediately issue a writ of habeas corpus.
Having been rebuked by the U.S. District Court, Commissioner Bruce Mitchell voided and annulled his contempt order, but never left the DeFlores case. According to Dr. Fine, Mitchell was milking it for all he could get from the massive settlement.
Ultimately ended up illegally taking $2 million out of the DeFlores class settlement fund to benefit himself and other judges.
As a result, Dr. Fine refocused his sights and filed suit against the judges.
Lacaos versus Lewin, which was against the judges for taking the money from the county, claiming that the money violated Article 6, Section 19 of the California Constitution. They dismissed that case, saying that that because there had been an order with respect to the attorney's fees and that order was final, I couldn't bring the case. Now that dismissal was wrong because since there was a fraud on the court, underneath it, the case could be brought.
Undaunted and not knowing what he was facing, he turned up the heat on the judges.
And I amended it and I filed the Silva versus the County of Los Angeles case, in which I named Judge Chalfant, who was the judge in the Silva versus Garcetti case with respect to the money going to the mothers and children. I named Doy Todd as an appellate court judge who was getting money and not disclosing it, and her two other associate justices on the appellate court, Boren and Knott, for not disclosing that they knew that she was breaking the law and didn't disclose it, which is also a violation of the Code of Judicial Ethics. And I named Mitchell as a commissioner who was sitting as a temporary judge who was getting the money. And this became a defendant's class action case where these were a defendant's class action. Each of these people were the subclasses, and the purpose of the case was to stop these payments based upon the fact that the payments violated Article 6, Section 19 of the California Constitution.
The defensive reaction of the court started to give Dr. Fine a hint of the size of the mountain that he was trying to move.
The district court then dismissed this case, this second Silva case, claiming that Silva didn't have standing, what we called constitutional standing, to bring it in the district court, even though Silva had a case going in the Superior Court to get an overpayment of money that he had made. So that shows you how the corruption was now beginning to go not only at the Superior Court level, but it was already into the U.S. District Court level.
We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you how Dr. Fine legally cornered the judges, proving their corruption, and then we'll show you the extreme and frightening measures the judges took in retaliation to defend their illegal payments. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and our interview with Dr. Richard I. Fine. Dr. Fine explains the laws and legal procedures that prohibit judges from taking payments other than their state salaries.
And under the Code of Judicial Ethics, you have, first of all, a judge cannot accept any money from anyone that's a party in front of them. Second of all, they have to disclose if they've received any money from a person who's a party in front of them. And third of all, they have to disqualify themselves. And fourth of all, you have under the United States Supreme Court cases that it's a fraud upon the court if someone has paid someone or done something to have that judge sitting there. So basically, they were breaking the law because it's a denial of due process. It's the question of whether the person in the court is receiving due process because the judge has been tainted. And the standard is if there's an appearance, there can be any appearance that the judge might be biased, the judge is out.
The system started attacking him by first denying him and his firm the payments they won in the settlements. Then the judges continued working to destroy him, eventually disbarring him on bogus charges. Why did he continue to fight, we ask him? Deep
down, I had a very basic belief that if I found an honest judge somewhere, I'd win. And I should emphasize, I believe in the system. I feel that the system that was set up by our Constitution works. It works if you have honest people in it who don't abuse it, and there are checks and balances on that abuse. So I didn't realize at that point in time how widespread the abuse was.
The third branch of government is the judicial system. It was established by our founding fathers to be a check on the easily corruptible political branches of government, the executive and legislative branches. Now it appears that this third branch has become corrupted by politics.
In California, a judge is a politician. Now I happen to think that that's better than appointing a judge for life in California the way the present appointment system works, where the governor makes the appointment and the only one that looks at it is the governor's committee. And then the guy goes out and gets elected. At least he gets elected, the public has a chance of having some input. We can vote him out. But Chief Justice, former Supreme Court Justice O'Connor, I believe, is out there now saying that we should change the system and never elect judges and just have them appointed politically. Now, imagine what we would end up with. If you've just seen what's happened with me, with Judge Yaffe, in a system that had both elections and federal judges appointed for life with the advice and consent of the Senate. Can you imagine what would happen to this country if now every state house, the governor could appoint his friends to be a judge for life? I mean, think of where we would be. So yes, politics is going to play a big role in any case in which there's going to be a public interest. And any judge that's going to tell you otherwise is not telling you the truth.
So what hope is there if decisions by the judges are made based on politics instead of reason? Aren't they operating under the rule of men instead of the rule of law as they're supposed to?
You can't get away from politics. But what you can have happen is that law has a lot of rules, and what we call the rule of law has been around for a long time. And so basically, if judges were to follow the rule of law, which we hope they do, things would work. It's when they don't follow it that things don't work. And in any type of political situation, you're going to find that the judge is going to be thinking as much politically as he is legally, because the judge is human. He brings his whole experience into his decision. We hope that the judge uses reasoning to come to a decision, but one can only suspect that basically what may happen is the judge may have a gut reaction and then write the decision to justify his gut reaction. And many of us have seen so many decisions that read that particular way.
So what happened with him? What caused Judge David Yaffe, who had held him in solitary confinement for 18 months, to suddenly relent and turn him loose?
I can't go into Judge Yaffe's head because, I don't know what was functioning in his mind. But taking his last minute order, which is the one that let me out, he's concluded that it was not worth it, that there was no purpose that was being served by having me in jail. Well, that's a conclusion that he could have made back on March 4th, 2009. Because on March 4th, 2009, the day that he ordered me to go to jail, I told him that I wasn't answering the questions. So, because we were going through the appeal process. So he knew that then.
The question stands. Why, after 18 months, did Judge Yaffe do a 180-degree turnabout? What changed to change his mind?
What I can infer from one line in his order, where he said that my being in jail acted as a deterrent to other attorneys to make the challenges based upon the facts in this case. And I think what happened is that his real purpose in putting me in jail was to deter anyone else from doing the challenges. And then he's now come to realize that it didn't work. Not only did it not work, but it backfired. And it backfired in the worst way possible. We got him to resign. We got him to resign, being faced with an investigation on the Commission on Judicial Performance, which could end up firing him. We got him to resign based upon the request for an investigation by the U.S. Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney, Jerry Brown, the State Attorney General, and Cooley, the State District Attorney, for obstruction of justice. So everything that he was trying to do has failed. I mean, we're now asking for an investigation by the Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Judiciary Committee with respect to this whole issue of judges taking money and putting in laws to make sure it doesn't occur. Everything backfired on him.
We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you, weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and our interview with the recently released Dr. Richard I. Fine. Suffering in jail for 18 months, being in solitary coercive confinement could weaken the resolve of any man. Additionally, every appeal Dr. Fine filed was either ignored or rejected, which had to be further dispiriting. We asked him what was his darkest moment of his confinement.
I think the darkest day was the day that I found out that the U.S. Supreme Court had turned us down. Because the district court I understood, because I knew, that they were just totally off the wall. The Ninth Circuit I understood because we had caught them taking money and having relationships with the County of Los Angeles. The U.S. Supreme Court, I felt, would follow the law and probably just send the case right back and order a writ of habeas corpus to be filed. And instead, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to let me out under the due process part that Yaffe ultimately leaves me out under, and they refused to take the case and refused to send it back and order a writ of habeas corpus be filed. And I think it was in that point in time that I fully recognized that the corruption, when I use the word corruption, not only the corruption of the payments, but the attitude of the abuse of power to allow the corruption to exist and stay within the system had gone so far that the entire system was undermined.
But even that became a positive inspiration and motivator.
But that day that ended up with greater resolution, because you have a dark day and then you come back and you say, well, let's recognize it. If this is what it is and it's this bad all the way up, we've now shown it, we've now proved it, and we go on from there to fix it.
They could have kept him in jail until he died. Every brief and every appeal he filed was being denied or ignored. We asked him why he thought he not only survived, but he prevailed.
There is someone upstairs taking care of me. And not only taking care of me, but showing that we will actually, we as a country will actually prevail in all of this. Because no matter what these people did to keep me in jail for 18 months, and no matter how many laws they broke, and no matter how many decisions they refused to follow, we had these epiphanies that took place. I mean, Yaffe, out of the clear blue sky, after having refused to let me out on one day, decides literally within 24 hours, or whatever it was, that he's going to let me out on his own motion. I mean, here this man has been fighting me for 18 months, doing everything possible. The courts have been fighting. Everybody's been fighting to keep me in jail, and suddenly I'm out. You know, it's very interesting that following the procedures didn't do it.
Would you do this all over again?
The answer to that is yes. The only qualification is that I'd have to think twice about it if I knew going in that I was going to be in jail for 18 months. Because at that point, I would have to have some very, very serious discussions with my family as to the effect upon the family and everything else. As I said earlier, I thought that the system would work and I would have been out within 5 days. And that was a major, I'll say, misjudgment on my behalf because of the fact that on March 4th, where I was standing, my research showed that every Supreme Court precedent was in my favor. I did not count on the fact, and I have to say I did not take into consideration the fact that every court up through the United States Supreme Court would deliberately refuse to follow those precedents.
What does the future hold for Dr. Richard I. Fine? He wants to restore his beloved justice system.
I'm very interested in ensuring that we restore the judicial system and that we restore the integrity of the judicial system. And I think that if my having been in jail for 18 months and to stand up for the principles that we must have an honest judicial system with integrity, if that can ignite just one small spark in the people of our country to go in there and get active and to transform the anger that is existing in this country right now against government and everything else into the positive moves of voting out these judges that got these illegal payments and moving forward to get the right laws in place and pressuring the politicians to do this, because we actually are the people that have the power. We do not have to buckle in. I'm not asking every person in the world to make a choice that I have made, because we've now explored the fact that you can see the background from where this choice came. For me, it was a very natural choice. For a person without my type of training, it would not be a natural choice. They would have another set of values that they had to look at. But what we all have in common is the ability to take charge of our system, the ability to get out there and vote, the ability to go in and pressure our elected representatives that they work for us, not for them. And once we become active and we transform our anger into activity, I think we can move forward, because the country's in a very, very bad state right now. The judicial system, as I said before, this is the last bastion. When this system went, and I'm not saying goes, the system's gone. When this system went, we lost all of our protections. Now we have to gain that back. We can do it. The only thing that is holding us back is basically the people that are fighting against us. And the people that are fighting against us are, unfortunately, the people that are abusing the power. So we get together the way we made America. America is a people that came from all over, that got together, helping each other to go forward. And if there's any point in time in the history of the United States in the last 230 some odd years, this is the time that we need to do that. The age of divisiveness is over. The age of cooperation and moving forward is here. I think I would like to be a part of that in whatever role I can play. And I think we will succeed at it. The cover-up is over. It's out in the open. It didn't work. The issue didn't die. I didn't die in jail. The issue is alive, and we're going to restore the judicial system.
We want to thank Dr. Fine for appearing on Full Disclosure. We want to know what you, the viewers, think. How many of you have seen the same corruption in the local courts? Are you willing to support restoring integrity to the court system? If you do, we want to hear from you. Please call Full Disclosure Town Hall number at Tell Us What You Think at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. Please join us next time for another edition of Full Disclosure. I'm Leslie Dutton. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.
my being in jail for 1 year and possibly longer should show you that nobody is immune from this abuse of power.
Dr. Richard I. Fine spent 18 months in jail to demonstrate how corrupt the California justice system really is. We'll show you what he uncovered next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Full Disclosure has spent the better part of the last 2 years bringing to light the alarming problems with the California judicial system. Being the news behind the news, we've spent dozens of hours documenting the sinister encroachment of county governments as they move to control the local judiciary for their benefit. As you will see in this 4-part series, this insidious encroachment is threatening the entire justice system, where the essence of a fair trial is being lost forever. This is the story of Dr. Richard I. Fine. It's just one account of this disturbing abuse of power. Our story begins with this first interview with Dr. Fine on March 3rd, 2009, the day before he was to face Los Angeles Superior Court Judge David Yaffe, and a charge of contempt of court. When we asked him if he was fearful, he became quite philosophical.
Tomorrow's hearing is interesting because the challenges that I've had before are basically challenges that we can say work within a functioning system. I mean, when I was getting all of this money back and so forth, I was dealing with a system that was functional. I mean, you have a case, you go into a court, it either gets settled, you win it, or you lose it, and you're dealing with a system that has integrity. Tomorrow's case, or the case that we have now, is dealing with a dysfunctional system because of the fact that this is now pure politics and retaliation.
We asked him to explain why Judge Yaffe is charging him with contempt of court.
He's found me in contempt for refusing to answer questions from a commissioner about an illegal order that he has made. And he wants to sentence me to jail until I answer those questions. Now, I have gone to the Court of Appeal with what is known as a writ of habeas corpus, which means bring in the body. And I have asked the Court of Appeal to enter a stay stopping Judge Yaffe from doing anything. I haven't heard yet as of today whether they've entered that stay or not. If they enter the stay, Judge Yaffe is dead in his tracks. If they don't enter the stay, then I'll go into the California Supreme Court, and if the California Supreme Court doesn't enter the stay, then I'll go into the United States District Court. Sooner or later, I will win.
He had no comprehension of the price he was about to pay. We asked him why it was so important to stand up to Judge Yaffe.
Every year, the county, as part of its budget, under what is known as trial court funding, if you look in the budget, you'll actually see this. Under trial court funding, you will see money going to the judges. And that money in this particular year is approximately $20 million, or $46,370 some odd dollars per judge.
He explained that the payments were wrong from the beginning, and that both the county and the judges understood this, yet they did it anyway.
They knew at that point in time that they couldn't do this. They knew that to do this was illegal because under the California Constitution, under what is known as Article 6, Section 19 of the California Constitution, only the state legislature could prescribe the compensation of the judges.
If the state constitution was clear that only the state could pay the judges, we could only surmise that why the county was paying extra money to the judges. Basically, the county was buying judges?
The bottom line of it is yes, because the only reason that the county could be giving this money, the only underlying reason, is that the county had cases in front of these judges. The county is a major litigant in the California courts. And it's the same thing as if the fictional Tony Soprano had been giving money to the judges. In fact, the county has an average, as far as normal cases are concerned. When I say normal, that's excluding child custody cases, that's excluding criminal cases, just taking your regular cases. The county has about 700 to 800 new cases a year in the Superior Court. So when the county is giving this money, the underlying thought, in my opinion, is that the county wanted to influence the judges to decide the cases in the county's favor.
But is there any proof that the county's investment in these judges pays off?
We have documents from the county council to the Board of Supervisors that shows that in the year 2005 and in the year 2006 and 2007, not one case that was decided by an LA Superior Court judge was decided against the County of Los Angeles. So basically, nobody won in that period of time. And for the year 2008, 2007, 2008, in that fiscal year, the documents are a little bit more vague, and possibly 2 cases were decided by a judge against the County of Los Angeles.
So even though it violates the Constitution, paying off the judges has had a significant financial benefit for the county. Do you believe that the individual judges are aware of what they've been doing is illegal?
Absolutely. There's no question that they knew that it was illegal. These people aren't like you or I, that are unaware of the law. These are judges. These are people that are supposed to uphold the law. They have a code of judicial ethics that makes them liable and makes them aware that they have to uphold the integrity of the court. They have to obey the laws of the California. They have taken an oath to obey the law of the state of California. They have taken an oath to obey the law, the Constitution of the United States of America, and the laws of the United States of America. And under Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution, they are bound to obey the law, the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States. There is no question whatsoever that they knew that they were taking illegal money. None whatsoever. They knew the California Constitution. They knew that the Constitution said that only the state could prescribe their compensation. They knew that they're state elected officials. They knew that they're state employees. They knew that they weren't working for the county, and they knew that this money was illegal. And they took it. No way that they can get around that.
On Tuesday, March 4th, he walked into the courtroom and stood defiantly in front of Judge Yaffe, who held him in contempt. He was cuffed and escorted by half a dozen sheriff's deputies directly to the notorious Los Angeles Central Men's Jail. There was no trial, no conviction. And as we found out over the next year and a half, no appeal. We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you how Dr. Fine continued his fight against the system while incarcerated in solitary coercive confinement. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in part 1 of our 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. We had the honor of interviewing a former Los Angeles Sheriff Deputy, Sergeant Richard Valdemar. Sergeant Valdemar spent several years working in custody within the Los Angeles jails. He shared with us what Dr. Fine was enduring and the hazards of being an enemy of the system.
You know, when you're in custody, you're at the mercy of the authorities that have placed you in custody. We have good deputies, but we've also had bad deputies that take advantage of the fact that you're, without, first of all, you're hidden from public view, and the circumstances of the jail are very sparse and very difficult for anyone to endure. So if just a little bit of effort on my part as a deputy could make your stay there intolerable. And, you know, unfortunately, we have to discipline deputies for that kind of thing. And I have actually seen people do that, taking advantage of the inmates. So I'd be concerned for Mr. Fine's, condition now, and being exposed to the wrong kind of people, making the system angry at him. This could be dangerous.
But Dr. Fine wasn't just lying around playing cards with the other inmates. He was vigorously fighting to win back his freedom. He first filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus on March 20th, but his writ was initially ignored until it was finally denied on May 5th, months later. He explained what happened in a phone call from his cell in the LA jail.
The magistrate judge immediately started breaking the law. Under the law, and the law is 28 United States Code Section 2243, upon receiving the writ, the petition for the writ, she had to either issue the writ, and the exact words are forthwith, or she had to issue an order to show cause to the respondent, who was the sheriff, forthwith.
The term forthwith is a legal term meaning immediately, promptly, and without delay. The denial from Magistrate Worley didn't deny his petition until May 5th, 46 days later.
And the magistrate judge has gone through and has violated the law, the 28 U.S.C. Section 2243, on all the counts that I have mentioned. So I should have been out of here as early as probably April 12th.
This phone call was recorded on June 30th, 10 weeks later.
But it gets even worse, because in reading her document, I came to realize that she had not even read the entire petition. In the order to show cause, it showed that I was criminally charged under Business and Professions Code Section 6126 for practicing law and holding myself out to practice law. And that was a criminal charge with a sentence of up to 1 year in jail. She claimed that that charge didn't exist, which indicates that she had not even read the order to show cause. So I knew that she hadn't read either the transcript of January 22nd, 2009, nor had she read the minute order of January 22nd, 2009, and nor had she read the papers that I filed in the California Court of Appeal or the California Supreme Court, and nor had she read the exhibits to the petition.
For our viewers' sake again, I'd like you to explain, why is it you are representing yourself?
Well, I'm representing myself because of the fact that we could not find any lawyer that has experience in this area who has the courage to represent me in this case. Writ of habeas corpus, you have effectively gone through and removed about 1,600 Superior Court judges in California. And you've definitely removed all of the 430 Superior Court judges here in LA County. But the interesting thing is that these judges have already thrown in the towel by not having contested the petition.
Mr. Fine is adamant that LA Superior Court Judge Yaffe, Magistrate Judge Carla Worley, and Los Angeles Sheriff Leroy Baca are illegally keeping him in confinement.
Any way that you look at this petition for writ of habeas corpus, I should have been out of here a long time ago.
A writ of habeas corpus demands that a party be released or the custodial authority demonstrate a reason for continued incarceration. The lack of response by either the sheriff or the Superior Court gave Dr. Fine additional ammunition in his fight to get free. No one in authority responded to the issues in his petition. So technically speaking, are they opposing his release?
The answer to that is no, because none of them opposed any of the grounds or the claims or the facts in the petition.
Well, how could this happen? That it appears that none of them are having any regard for the statutes or the rules.
Then you're absolutely correct. All of them, at this point in time, the sheriff, the LA Superior Court, the sheriff violated the law by not giving reasons for my being in here, and also didn't respond to the petition at all. And the LA Superior Court and Judge Yaffe, in a sense, violated the law by not directly responding to the petition, and also did not answer any of the grounds, the facts, or the claims, and did not oppose anything in the petition. So right now, it turns out that the sheriff, the LA Superior Court, and Judge Yaffe have basically thrown in the towel. They're not opposing anything.
According to Dr. Fine, by not refuting his arguments in his petition, Dr. Fine would win by default. That would mean that they had no grounds to continue holding him. That's according to the law. But he remained in jail, so he turned up the heat. On May 26th, he sent his petition to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. As you will see in this next telephone interview, once again the court took their time before denying his appeal.
The panel has succumbed to the cancer of corruption and the criminals in judicial robes.
It affirmed the lower court's decision denying his writ of habeas corpus, keeping him in solitary confinement in the Los Angeles County Men's Central Jail.
They have gone through and they have violated hundreds of years of established judicial precedent that a party cannot be a judge in his own case. There's no question that this particular opinion is clearly violating the Supreme Court precedent. And the Ninth Circuit is bound to follow the Supreme Court. They do not have a choice. The Ninth Circuit is buying into the corruption. So the cancer of the tyranny has now spread into the Ninth Circuit.
As the legal battle continued ponderously on, Dr. Fine began struggling with physical issues. We documented this new problem in this video. On January 5th, Mr. Fine broke his upper dental plate, making it impossible for him to chew. He attempted to have it repaired by filing an inmate complaint with the sheriff, which, like all of his court filings, was promptly and completely ignored. Hearing of his plight, Full Disclosure asked longtime ACLU supporter Ed Asner to use his influence to convince the ACLU to intercede on Mr. Fine's behalf. He generously obliged, and within the next day, the ACLU visited Mr. Fine. According to a decision by Judge Pregerson, the ACLU was contracted by Sheriff Baca to be the jail monitor for the infamous LA County jails, especially in regards to inmates with health problems and complaints. Their aid to Dr. Fine was underwhelming.
So basically, what's come out of the ACLU at this particular point in time is zero.
In a phone call from his cell, Dr. Fine explained the response he got from the ACLU.
The ACLU coming in as the monitoring of the health part, sending a letter and saying if nothing happens within 10 days to call them or contact them.
Your call may be monitored or recorded
At a telephone number that is blocked.
We asked the ACLU representatives why they block calls from inmates in the jail that they are supposed to be monitoring. Did Mr. Fine tell you that he tried to reach you at the phone number that was given to him to call you?
Yeah, we talked about that. He was under the impression it accepted collect calls, and it does not. So that he had been trying to call it collect, and we don't accept collect calls right now.
So Dr. Fine took on the responsibility for himself. When Mr. Fine sent a second complaint about his broken dental plate, he was jerked around by the bureaucracy.
Yesterday, what happened is that I received a notice to go down to the medical department, and on the notice it said court order. And I figured, well, maybe the ACLU must have done something, to get a court order to have me go out and have my dental fixed. But when I got I got downstairs, they told me that the court order was just meaningless. Those were just words that they used. And I had a clerk that wanted to have me sign off that we had a discussion with respect to the dental plate. And I said, well, what discussion are we having? And she said, well, sign off that we talked about this. And I said, well, we haven't talked about it. I said, what discussion? She said, well, you didn't sign a paper before. And I said, so? She said, well, sign here that you're going to sign this. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so we never had a discussion. I said, and I told her, I said, if you want to tell me that we're discussing, my plate and what's going to be done about it, let's discuss that. She said, no, I'm not going to discuss that. I said, well, did you know that the ACLU has written you? And she said, no. I said, well, maybe you ought to review your file. She said, I'm not going to do that either. I said, well, then we aren't having any discussions. She said, sign here. I said, no.
Suddenly, without a warning, a miracle happened.
This morning, at approximately, I would say, 7 o'clock this morning, the jail came to me and said that I had a pass to go to the dentist. And they came and they took me to the dentist, and all of a sudden, the dentist said that they were going to do a mold on my mouth. Now, this is the same dentist, exact same person, that told me the last time that I was there that he couldn't do anything. And not only couldn't, but would not do anything.
So apparently the deputies in the jail are doing what Judge Yaffe wanted: make Fine suffer. And only outside pressure was able to get his dental work repaired so he could eat. How long could he hold out? Why is he doing this? Especially at the cost of his career, his family, and potentially his freedom for the rest of his life.
Unless we fight this corruption right now, this corruption will erode our entire governmental system. So we have to fight it now and stop it now before it erodes everything.
We're going to take another short break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you how the legal team of volunteers discovered how corrupt the court system really is. It's sad, but eye-opening. We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you, weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in Part 1 of our 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. People alarmed at the predicament of Dr. Fine began rallying to his aid. Marty Mason was the office manager and paralegal who worked for Dr. Fine for years. When she discovered what was happening to her former boss, she quickly volunteered to get all the court documents formatted and filed in proper order. She has discovered some unsettling behavior of the court in Dr. Fine's case.
I have worked on very sophisticated and complicated cases, but I have never seen any kind of situation like I'm looking at here in terms of problems with documents not even appearing in the docket. Before all of this happened, it never would have even occurred to me to question the integrity of a court docket. Now, I never will again.
A docket is an online file that shows all the relevant documents pertaining to a case. We asked her to explain what she found so disturbing.
Well, for example, in the district court case concerning disbarment, there are a total of 7 documents in the docket, but they're only identifying them by numbers 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7, meaning number 2 and number 6 are missing.
The bureaucracy was doing its best to inhibit Dr. Fine and anyone helping him. We asked her what was the effect of these documents suddenly being lost in the court.
It's making it nearly impossible. It's happened far too many times for it all to be accidental. This is the 3rd case, not the 3rd document, but the 3rd case in which documents that have been filed have not shown up on the docket. And in one other instance, the missing document was used to justify striking one of his pleadings for failure to follow a certain rule, except that he had, and they knew it, but it was the only way to justify denying his habeas corpus petition. So the rules don't provide for playing hide and seek with legal documents, which is one reason we provide the documents ourselves on the website, so at least the public can see what they contain and know what's going on and know Richard's side of the story.
As a former paralegal, Ms. Mason was disheartened by the despicable subterfuge of the court.
And it's still hard for me to accept that you can't trust the basic things to have any integrity. I have had other people make comments to me about problems with the dockets, and I kind of didn't really listen because it just didn't permeate my brain that was even remotely possible. And yet I have seen now, in the past 4 months I've been working on this, so many different examples, and they all have to do with critical documents concerning Richard's case.
The missing documents require Marty and her team to supply replacement filings, which they do without fail. But this costs Dr. Fine more time in solitary confinement.
Some of the judges meet on Mondays to consider such motions. Yes, they cost him another week in jail. This is the same case that I called them about yesterday, where I got transferred to 5 different clerks looking for what happened to this motion. So I guess now it has appeared after I questioned so many people about it yesterday.
So once again, outside pressure caused the missing document to mysteriously reappear in the court docket. The system was doing its absolute best to frustrate Dr. Fine and make him suffer. Sergeant Valdemar shared her concern about the way California justice system was treating Dr. Fine.
I mean, the basic freedoms that we enjoy all depend on our judicial system being fair and equitable. When we lose that, then any one of us could wind up in Mr. Fine's position, by doing something contrary to what some judge decides is proper.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Have you experienced this kind of arrogant abuse of power in your local court? Are you willing to do something about it? If yes, please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number and let us know what you think. At 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us for the next edition, Part 2, of this 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. That's coming up next on Full Disclosure. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.
when he ordered me to tell him my assets, I said, Judge, I'm not telling you my assets. I'm going to take a writ of habeas corpus against you, and I'm going to kick you out of this court. I'm going to kick you out, and I'm going to kick out every dishonest judge who has taken a bribe. And I'm going to clean up this judicial system once and for all.
Still defiant after a year in jail, Dr. Richard I. Fine was determined to win back his freedom and restore the California judicial system. How could he do this while incarcerated in solitary coercive confinement in the dreaded LA County Men's Central Jail? Full Disclosure took on the sheriff, fighting to interview Dr. Fine inside the jail just to find out. You've got to see what happened and what he said next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Full Disclosure has spent the better part of the last 2 years bringing to light the alarming problems with the California judicial system. Being the news behind the news, we've spent dozens of hours documenting the sinister encroachment of county governments as they move to control the local judiciary for their benefit. As you will see in this 4-part series, this insidious encroachment is threatening the entire justice system, where the essence of a fair trial is being lost forever. This story of Dr. Richard I. Fine is just one account of this disturbing abuse of power. In Part 2, we'll show you how Full Disclosure submitted a request to the Los Angeles County Sheriff, Leroy Baca, to take our cameras into the Men's Central Jail to interview Dr. Fine. We wanted to verify that he was all right and to show the viewers how he had fared during his first year in jail. Our request got the same response that Dr. Fine got with all his petitions. Our request was summarily denied.
Hi, Leslie. This is Steve Whitmore. I am unfortunately the bearer of bad news. The sheriff has repeatedly told me that that will not happen, and so your request has been denied. And he has not. I just talked to him yesterday about this, and he said it again. He said, no, that's not going to happen. So it's not going to happen, Leslie, and I'm sorry to have to deliver that to you, but that is what the sheriff's decision is, and it's his discretion. And I know that is bad news, and I'm sorry for that, but that is a final decision.
Like Dr. Fine, Full Disclosure doesn't roll over when government bureaucrats say no. We contacted our associates at Judicial Watch. With their help, we filed suit against Los Angeles Sheriff Department. After a month of wrangling, we were finally allowed to go inside the Los Angeles Central Men's Jail with our cameras to interview Dr. Fine. We asked Sheriff spokesman Steve Whitmore to explain the sudden change in policy.
No, not you.
That may not be fair to him. So
Yes.
I'd like you to explain what led up to his changing his mind.
The process of changing his mind was the fact that we had a visit one day, and I suggested to him, why don't we just let her do it with the camera? And he said, okay, let's do it. I know that sounds simple, and I know that you think maybe there's more machinations, if you will, that went into the decision, but that was the decision.
The lawsuit didn't have a thing to do with it.
Not with the sheriff, no, not at all. Obviously, logic dictates when you take an action like that, it comes to the forefront of everybody's attention. But the sheriff didn't seem to be, I don't know if he was interested. I think he's a curious man, so he was interested. But no, but it wasn't, he said to me specifically, because I said, that's great, let's do it, but you know what, maybe I should talk to the attorneys. I said that, because I'm not very smart. And he said, that has nothing to do with my decision. Let her interview Richard Fine. He needs to make sure he signs the waivers, which he did. And he said, Steve, I want you there. So I was there. If there was a sense, or even because of me saying this is not going to happen, I should have been, that falls on my shoulders. That shows on my inability to explain that, Leslie, he doesn't want you to come in with the camera. And I think I did say that, but I should have said it clearer, and I didn't. And then he changed his mind. If the question is, Steve, you said this wasn't going to happen definitively, and then it did happen, And understandably, you're saying, what happened in the middle? What changed it? That's what changed it. This is presumptuous for me to say that I changed it, because I don't. He is the sheriff, and we should be fair to him. It is his decision, and he said, yes, let's let her do it.
So we did it. We sat down with Dr. Fine and asked him to tell us what happened over the last year. He explained a progression of coercion.
I was then put into a private cell, solitary confinement cell, and I was in that cell for a number of days, and then I was moved into the Twin Towers, and I was put for some reason or another under suicide watch. And under the suicide watch, I was given a type of a gown. It was a heavy type of a gown that had the sort of a tape on the side of it, no other garments, and I was in suicide watch for approximately a week to a week and a half. Now, the interesting thing about this, no reason for suicide watch whatsoever. I mean, I'm not suicidal or anything else. And in that particular area, they don't, when they give you your meals, they don't even give you any utensils with which to eat. So you're basically eating with your hands. I was in that suicide watch for the period of time. I did not have any type of a shower or anything else for approximately, I think it was about a week before I was allowed to take my first shower. And then I was able to use the telephone, once or twice, a few times during that period of time.
Former Los Angeles Sheriff Deputy Richard Valdemar had worked with the LA jails early in his career. He underscored the torment that suicide watch creates for inmates.
I've never met Mr. Fine myself personally. I've heard him speak on videotape and read articles about him, but he never seemed to me to be mentally incompetent of going through the procedure and being held in a jail setting. I mean, it's a tough situation for anyone, but I don't see that he would be that weak that he might commit suicide. There are people, of course, who have a real bad reaction to confinement and do become very depressed and suicidal. Hopefully, he was evaluated by a mental health professional before that was done. But I have seen that occur when the officers themselves have a feeling that this might occur. Somebody becomes suicidal. Frankly, though, without some information showing that there was a risk to his life and safety, it's offensive to me that would be done to any man. It smacks of Russia, who often use their mental institutions to house people who are politically incorrect. It's offensive to me.
We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you how Dr. Fine continued his fight against the system while incarcerated in solitary coercive confinement. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in Part 2 of our 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. Not only was he being persecuted, but he was being prohibited from mounting his own legal defense.
And I'm in the solitary confinement in the hospital area. I still was not given any pencils, any papers, or any means in which to be able to conduct my defense. I was not listed as an in pro per, so I was not able to get to the law library, and that delayed my filing of my writ of habeas corpus for a number of days. So from March 4th until March 20th, I was not able to file the writ of habeas corpus.
Eventually, the jail staff began to take pity on this poor man.
Finally, one of the lieutenants actually gave me his pencils. So it was actually one of the lieutenants here in the jail who actually gave me his own personal pencil, so I would have something and some paper to be able to start out. And my writ of habeas corpus was actually dictated over the telephone by me to some friends of mine, and that's how we were able to do things. That was the actual start. Every time that I was moved, there was a sergeant present with a couple of other guards and a video camera.
Most criminals have a lawyer. Even the state will provide one without cost, but not Dr. Fine. He had to represent himself improper, as it is called. And why were you representing yourself improper?
I was representing myself improper because there was no attorney of the 208,000 attorneys in California that was willing to take this case. We called the ACLU, and the ACLU told us that they wouldn't take the case because they claimed that they didn't have any resources. But actually the real reason is that nobody was willing to take on the judges.
He was fighting this fight all alone. It seemed to be going on forever. How long have you been here now?
This is March 10th. My year was up on March 4th. I came here on March 4th, 2009, so I've now been here a year and 6 days.
Have you been in solitary confinement for the whole time? Never got outside or anything?
I've been in solitary confinement the entire time. I've been outside for 9 hours in this year and 10 days. I've had 9 hours outside. It was 3 times at 3 hours per time. And when I go outside to a little cage, and the cage is approximately maybe 4 feet by 6 feet. And I'm in that cage, and that's the outside times. 2 of the 3 times I was outside in the evening. It was on a Sunday night on both times from 7 o'clock until about 10 o'clock at night. And one of the times they came and they got me at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was outside from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m.
According to Sergeant Valdemar, excluding the extremely dangerous inmates, almost every other inmate gets dedicated exercise time.
But our regular inmates are allowed a certain number of days on the roof to exercise on a regular basis, because we know that confinement without exercise in a real close quarters situation like most inmates are housed creates problems for us, and not only for them, because they get stir crazy basically, and eventually they chafe against one another and create situations, and we have riots. We have riots in the jail if we don't continually take opportunities to give them exposure to the outside air and exercise.
Dr. Fine was very clear in his understanding of why he was being subjected to this unusually difficult punishment.
What happened very simply is I caught the judges taking the bribes. And then what happened is I brought cases where the judges were sitting on county cases having taken a bribe, and I said to the judges, "Judges, you can't do this. You can't sit on these cases." And the judges retaliated. And in the last case in which they retaliated, which is the Marina Strand case, the judge said, "Not only am I going to retaliate against you for having caught me, Judge Yaffe, taking the bribe, but in addition to that, I'm ordering you to pay money to the county." And then what he did is he said, "I'm ordering you to pay money to the county." And when I said, "Judge, you can't order me to pay money to the county because you can't sit on this case," he said, "Worse than that, I'm going to hold you in contempt until you tell me your assets so that we can enforce this illegal order against you." And that's how I ended up in jail.
We asked him if from his long legal experience, if he knew of any other case where someone was being held for this long a period of time in solitary coercive confinement. Does he now hold the record?
To my knowledge, yes. I think I'm the only person, and I believe that there's a professor at Brooklyn Law School who has commented in an article in the Daily News that it's the first time that she's ever heard of anyone to be in solitary confinement on this type of a charge, you know, which is basically coercive confinement to answer questions, to be this long.
According to Dr. Fine, his continued confinement is totally illegal, with no legal precedent.
Under the case law, I actually should not have even been put in jail because of the fact that the judge knew that there was no way that putting me in jail would coerce me to answer any of the questions. But even if he did put me in jail, he could only keep me here for that period of time until it became obvious that I would not answer the questions. In my case, that would probably have been a day. When it comes to the point in time when it becomes obvious that I am not going to be coerced into answering the questions, my sentence of coercive confinement automatically transforms into becoming penal. And when it becomes penal, under the law, I can only be here for 5 days, because under California Code of Civil Procedure Section 1218, the greatest amount of time that I can be held under penal confinement is 5 days. So, one, he made a mistake in putting me in here in the beginning because the judge knew that I wasn't going to be coerced. And second of all, the minute I got in here, it became obvious that it was going to be penal, so I should have been out within 5 days at the most.
Remember, Dr. Fine had never been charged with a crime. He's never been convicted or sentenced. And yet he remained in jail with no end in sight. He continued to move his case up the judicial ladder.
I have one application in the United States Supreme Court before Justice Kennedy for a stay of execution of sentence to get out of here based upon the fact that I shouldn't be in here while the proceedings are taking place. And that's based upon a case that Justice Douglas let out a reporter, William T. Farr, in 1974, who was being held in coercive confinement for not answering questions about his sources.
In the William T. Farr case, the United States Supreme Court established specific limits on the time a person could be held in coercive confinement. Dr. Fine's confinement had already exceeded guidelines established in that case. Once again, the justice system ignored its own laws and precedents.
And the second thing is that we're presently preparing a writ of certiorari, as it's called, to go to the U.S. Supreme Court to have the Supreme Court review this case based upon the fact that there's been a violation of due process because Judge Yaffe, who had taken the bribe in this case, did not have the right to sit on the case and decide the case in the first instance, and in the second instance he did not have the right to sit in a contempt proceeding and judge his own actions. And you have Supreme Court precedent, that case precedent that holds that he could not do either of those two things.
We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you how LA citizens took to the streets to support Dr. Fine. We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you, weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and part 2 of our 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. For very suspicious reasons, the Los Angeles Times made a point of ignoring the plight of Dr. Fine. Publicizing his predicament became the sole burden of Full Disclosure Network. Being the news behind the news, we didn't stop, because the local cable channels in Los Angeles had been shut down by the city government. We kept the issue alive outside of Los Angeles on cable access channels and the internet. We realized why the government shut down the channels and tried to silence the public voice. But due to our efforts, the Los Angeles citizens began to get involved. The next video sparked an outcry across the nation. This video shows a major protest that was held on behalf of Richard Fine in downtown Los Angeles, right in front of the Los Angeles Superior Courthouse. Angry citizens gathered in front of the Los Angeles Superior Court. They've had enough. Speaker Fred Sotilli explained why they are so upset.
Now, Richard I. Fine needs just one honest man. He looked in the county court, didn't find one. He looked in the district court, didn't find one. He looked in the federal courts. He looked in California's appellate courts. He looked in California's Supreme Courts. He looked in the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court. Still, not one honest man. Now, he's looking in the United States Supreme Court. How does that happen in this country?
I had a guy in jail with no charges and no trial for over a year. How can I not be here?
How does somebody end up in jail for a year with no charges and no trial?
My name is Larry John. I'm a former military policeman working nuclear security in the Air Force and a former police officer with NDOPD. And I'm out here today supporting Mr. Fine and what I find a gross miscarriage of justice in his illegal incarceration.
I'm just tired of the corruption. I'm tired of the blatant corruption. They just will do what they will, and they'll just say, well, okay, we took the money, but we're going to make a new law that says that's okay, and also a law that says we're forgiven for that. So if you don't like it, we'll throw you in jail.
Among the protesters was former LA Sheriff Sergeant Richard Valdemar. We asked him why he was there.
Partly to apologize to Mexico, because I'm one of the fingers that points at Mexico and talks about the corruption that exists in their judicial system. You know, we call that the mordida, the bite, you know, where the whole system operates on taking bribes. Well, guess what? I found out that we have that right here in Los Angeles County.
It's unusual for Mr. Valdemar to join any protest.
Usually I'm on the other side of the protest. This time I'm on this side.
I was going to say, this is rather unusual for you. What made you cross the line?
Well, Mr. Fine is an honorable man trying to do the honorable, ethical thing. And if I don't support that, then our system, which to me seems to be going to hell in a handbasket, will just continue to slide down that slope. So I'm going to support any man who makes the ethical or moral stand wherever he is.
And what I find going on here just completely violates every oath that I've ever taken, and I know it violates the judicial oath and all the oaths of the other officers in California.
If the Supreme Court doesn't do it, they'll just prove that they're just as corrupt as these LA County judges.
What are you talking about? How did this happen? This happens in Russia, not here. You don't get put in jail and no trial or anything. I guess they hide behind contempt of court or something. It's all bull. So.
And the bribery! $208,000 lawyers in California are paid daily by people who lose. We even pay the lawyers who represent the county as it steals from us. That's what we do, and then we lose.
And it's no wonder that people who sue the county of Los Angeles continually lose. If a third of my income came from one party and I was asked to adjudicate something, I might be influenced by that and not make a proper decision. So here I am, a voice.
I'm here because it's about time the people of Los Angeles stood up and knew exactly what their law enforcement system, their court system, and their city system as well as county system, all the way up to the state, are doing with their money.
Judy Kemiche, and somebody forwarded your website to me, full disclosure, and I watched the whole thing and all the interview, and it just broke my heart.
I'm appalled at what's happening, and I'm here to do whatever it is that I can. I've been working at trying to contact our normal mainstream media, and they're paying no attention. Except for you. it seems like there's a blackout.
Getting any coverage from the regular mainstream media?
You know, I have to tell you, I was anticipating it. I think that we might get some later. It's still not too late.
Actually, I researched this. I was reading about this last year, and I'm just appalled, but not surprised at the corruption of Los Angeles County, judges and someone who's good and who has a heart to do their job correctly, which is what an attorney should do, and they get jailed for it. Doesn't surprise me at all.
So we're here today to show our support for Dr. Fine, to show the people of this state and of this great country that if you will be made to pay for your honesty, you will be made to pay for your integrity and your morality if you stand up before the court and tell them what they're doing is wrong and stand up and assert your rights as a citizen in this country.
Mr. Fine's colleagues who walk in and out of this courtroom must know of this. If we bring it to their attention, they're going to ask questions. All those questions put a little fire underneath those judges up there. So hopefully this will do some good. The people of Los Angeles should know that this is happening and understand why cases that should be in their favor are not being adjudicated that way.
He's given us a remedy. What he told us to do is throw the bums out.
Yeah, we need a cleanup in this county when it comes to certain judicial officers.
And I feel they should be held accountable for these crimes, and they should serve serious time for judicial tyranny that we've been under for the last 20 years.
Richard Fine, we're here to support you, and we'll do whatever we can. Go to the president, go to whatever we have to do.
I'm standing here for that poor man right now, yeah.
It's happening in this country? I don't think so.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Do you support the effort of Richard Fine? Do you appreciate the purpose of his suffering was to bring attention to the demise of our California judicial system? If you would like to get involved in this movement to turn this unforgivable situation around, please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number and tell us what you think at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us for the next edition of Part 3 of this 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. That's coming up next on Full Disclosure. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777. or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.
my case, we're dealing strictly with a judge who was not supposed to be sitting on the bench, who took a bribe. And he's put me in here basically to enforce an order as part of his bribe.
Are the payments from LA County to the Superior Court judges actually bribes, as Dr. Fine suggests? There seems to be some evidence to support that. Coming up next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Full Disclosure has spent the better part of the last 2 years bringing to light the alarming problems with the California judicial system. Being the news behind the news, we have spent dozens of hours documenting the sinister encroachment of county governments as they move to control the local judiciary for their benefit, especially in Los Angeles. As you will see in this 4-part series, this insidious encroachment is threatening the entire justice system, where the essence of a fair trial is being lost forever. This story of Richard I. Fine is just one account of this disturbing abuse of power. In Part 3, we investigated some of the other factors that directly affected Dr. Fine, sort of the big picture story. A public interest law firm, Judicial Watch, sued LA County in what became known as the Sturgeon case. As Sterling Norris from Judicial Watch explained, the LA judges weren't about to give up their unearned benefits without a fight.
We won the case in October of last year in the Court of Appeals in San Diego. They declared those benefits unconstitutional. The county then appealed to the California Supreme Court, petitioned the California Supreme Court to review it. They denied it. That means under law that Court of Appeals decision is the law of the state of California in relation to judicial compensation. And that should have ended the matter there.
But it didn't. Even though the ruling became case law, the law of California, the judges did an end run around the court. They went to the California legislature and wrote an emergency bill, Senate Bill SBX 211, which was passed without discussion and without any public notice as a part of the way overdue California state budget. It was stunning to see the lengths to which the judges were willing to go to allow the illegal payments to continue. As part of SBX 211, they included an immunity provision.
The immunity, an excuse from liability. They have immunity from, they put into this bill an immunity from prosecution. Immunity from prosecution for what? And liability for what? I've talked to several assistants to various legislators. They have never ever seen any of this immunity or excuse from liability in any kind of legislation, much less any kind of legislation dealing with the judiciary.
Now, was this immunity going forward or immunity retroactive?
That's in the language of the bill, it's immunity for participating in these judicial benefits. And of course, there is a criminal doctrine of law that says if you receive money that you know you are not entitled to, it is theft.
Theft, that's a crime. The California Constitution clearly states that the state is the only party responsible for paying the salary of the judges. And this was upheld by the Sturgeon case. But for the past 20 years, these judges have been deliberately taking these prohibited payments, and so they wanted and needed protection against being criminally prosecuted for this theft of $300 million.
I believe legally that is not valid. I do not believe you can immunize somebody after the fact. If you've committed a crime, I do not believe you can then come and say, okay, they had immunity. It has to be going forward.
Former Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney Sterling Norris was saddened and disappointed by the fact that these were very top officials of the legal profession who were shameless in their brazen efforts to enrich themselves. It was apparent to everyone that the judges were willing to stop at nothing to get additional money to which they weren't entitled to receive and had not earned.
And to think that the parties that are involved in this are judges. I mean, you have to say, I know most of society likes to look at the judiciary as something as probably the most highest integrity of any governmental agency, more than the legislature, more than the executive branch, and I think this goes just the opposite. Makes it very questionable.
But that immunity wasn't all exclusive. In their hurry to get the measure through the California legislature, the judges and their lawyers made a couple of mistakes. Dr. Richard I. Fine knew where they were vulnerable. When we come back from this short break, you'll hear him tell from his jail cell how the blatant greed of these judges will become their undoing, and you'll hear how he plans to take them down. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in Part 3 of our 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. During his 18 months in solitary coercive confinement in the Los Angeles Central Men's Jail, Dr. Fine was industrially working not only to free himself, but to set about removing the corrupt judges who had put him there. He explained how Senate Bill SBX 211 would perhaps protect the judges from being arrested and jailed for taking the money, but it didn't absolve the judges from their legal obligations in court.
Now that immunity was retroactive, but they did not give them immunity from sitting on the cases. So basically, the judges have the immunity from having taken the bribes and from the misappropriation of the funds, and the immunity from the obstruction of justice, but they didn't get the immunity from wrongfully sitting on the cases.
The issue Dr. Fine is identifying is violation of due process. He explained it quite clearly.
When they sit on a case where they've taken a bribe from somebody, they violated due process. And you have a case called basically Offutt versus the United States, which says that when a judge has taken a bribe from an interested party, it is not the appearance of justice, and the appearance of justice is due process. So right then and there, they violated the Constitution, and they cannot violate the Constitution. They cannot sit on a case where they've taken a bribe.
But the judges and their lawyers would argue that the payments from the county were not bribes. Dr. Fine refuted that.
We have documents that show from the years 2005 through right now, there were only 3 people that won a case against LA County when an LA County judge made the decision. So you have that part. Then to bring it even closer into me, with respect to me and the sheriff, you can take it into the 2002 propositions, where we had the propositions in LA County with respect to term limits, and the Sheriff Baca came in and sued, saying that he wanted to get out from under the term limits, and what happened? The judge decided that the sheriff gets out from under the term limits.
And who paid for that lawsuit?
County taxpayers. It ends up that the Board of Supervisors covered Sheriff Baca's attorney's fees to go in and go against we the taxpayers. We the taxpayers end up paying for that.
Are you talking about the initiative that the voters approved?
That's right.
For term limits?
For term limits.
So the taxpayers paid for initiative paid for the lawsuit to defeat the initiative that they enacted.
Exactly.
So the state superior court judges in LA County would consistently make decisions that favored the LA County. Then they even went so far as to reverse initiatives passed by the voters of LA County to benefit and protect top elected LA County officials. The investment of these extra legal payments to the judges by the LA County officials paid off substantially for the county, and this directly affected Dr. Fine. He explained how the sheriff and the judges broke the law with impunity by failing to take action on his writ of habeas corpus.
Now, what does Sheriff Baca do in my case? I'm in here illegally, and what's happening with Sheriff Baca? Sheriff Baca is keeping me in here. On the one hand, Sheriff Baca tells the federal court he doesn't know why I'm in here. That's his official statement to the federal court. He doesn't oppose the writ, and at the same point in time, he keeps me in here. So this gives you an idea of how totally corrupt this entire situation is.
Then Dr. Fine related what Full Disclosure has titled the Triangle of Evil, where huge sums of money move from the developers to the county officials, who then give generous, extraordinary bonuses to the judges to defend and protect the schemes of their supporters.
The county's decision to go out and pay the judge had to come from somewhere. I mean, the county is not going to sit there in the middle of nowhere and decide that suddenly they're going to be paying off the judge. You know, they aren't really that generous. I mean, they have to have a reason for that. Now, the reason for that has to be, in my mind, that the county wants to do something to help people that are helping the county or helping the supervisors. Now, who's going to be helping the supervisors? It's going to be people that are giving the supervisors contributions. So basically, you're going to be dealing, you have to look to who's paying the supervisors. And the people that are paying the supervisors, you look to their contributors. And their contributors are going to be the developers.
Then he supported that rationale with a specific example, the case that landed him in jail.
In the initial case that we're in here on, the Marina Strand case, you have Jerry Epstein, a developer in the marina who wants to expand on the Delray Shores project, gives contributions to supervisors Antonovich and Kanabi. He gives those contributions within 12 months of the time that they vote on an environmental impact report. Well, that's illegal because they can't vote within 12 months of getting a contribution. The vote on the environmental impact report is illegal. It comes in, I sue on behalf of the Marina Strand Colony 2 Homeowners Association. We go in front of Yaffe. Yaffe gets money from the county. Yaffe ends up not throwing the EIR out and instead gives an order that I should pay money to the county. So you have the developer making the contribution to the supervisors giving an illegal vote for the developer, the supervisors paying a bribe to the judge upholding the illegal EIR, ordering me to pay money to the county and also to the developer's attorneys, and then throwing me in jail.
This is not mere speculation. In his usual, uncompromising attention to detail, Dr. Fine investigated how the payments to the judges goes far beyond his case. The corruption in the county court affects almost everybody who lives in LA County. According to Dr. Fine, there is no justice to be found in the LA County courts.
I did a survey of the various developers, and I traced the money that was going from the developers to the supervisors, and then you go from the supervisors to the judges. The other thing that you have, the other links that you have, is that you have certain relationships that the county has. And I'll give you an example. Let's take in the family court. Under Title IV, the county gets money with respect to foster children. So every time that the county puts, in the old days and still works, every time the county puts somebody into foster care, the county gets money. Now they either get a flat rate or they get money for each foster child. So there's an interest for the judge to order somebody into foster care because the county's going to get money. Another thing you have is for non-custodial parents to be paying child support. The county gets matching funds under Title IV. So the county has an interest if the judge is going to order to take the custodial rights away from a parent and then order that parent to pay child support. The only thing that is not involved with the county are going to be lawsuits between two individuals or lawsuits with insurance companies. Everything else is going to be involved with government. There's a reason for the supervisors to pay the judges, and there's a reason for people to pay the supervisors.
Dr. Fine had been confident that the higher courts in California would stand on principle and stop the corruption of the lower courts by reversing their actions. He was sadly dismayed by what they did.
And at the district court, since the sheriff does not respond to the writ of habeas corpus, what does the district court do? The district court doesn't even decide the issue as to whether Yaffe should have recused himself or not from the contempt proceeding. They duck that issue. And the second thing that they do with respect to Yaffe having taken the bribes, they don't cite any precedent as to say that's being okay, even though there's a 2009 Supreme Court case that comes down and says that that would be a denial of due process.
Over his long career, Dr. Fine has had a long string of successful cases where he has sued various government entities and agencies.
I have returned or stopped over $1 billion of money being misappropriated by state and municipal governments. Interestingly enough, when it came to the county, on the county things, I was not very successful. But from the state of California, from other districts, or from cities, or from Orange County, very successful. In Los Angeles County, I wasn't doing too well. And the only thing that I can attribute to that is the fact that because when I was dealing in Los Angeles County in the Los Angeles Superior Court, they were getting paid off.
We asked Dr. Fine if perhaps the reason he was sitting there in jail was because the Triangle of Evil considered him a threat and went after him aggressively with all their resources to disbar and destroy him.
Absolutely. Well, I put it in two ways. In one sense, when I was doing these cases with respect to getting the money out of the trust funds, the Department of Finance, I think this was under Pete Wilson, the Department of Finance told the legislature that if you take any more money out of the trust funds or the special funds, we're going to call Richard and he's going to sue you. So in one way, the government looked at me as a very good force. With respect to the judges, it becomes a different story because the judges are so arrogant and feel themselves to be so above the law that someone who is going after them when they're on the take, they can't handle that. They cannot deal with the fact that I have caught them with their hand in the cookie jar. And that is where we have the problem, because they refuse to recognize the fact that they are breaking the law. Not only are they breaking the law, but the Code of Judicial Ethics says that they cannot enter into a financial arrangement with anyone that is likely to appear in front of them.
And LA County has hundreds of cases in front of the LA Superior Court judges every year. Some people have suggested that the judges merely weren't aware of additional money being added to their paychecks. Perhaps they merely didn't recognize the $50,000 perk as unearned. Dr. Fine was adamant that the judges are fully aware and always have been.
They knew from day one that they were breaking the law. And they went ahead and they did it. They destroyed our judicial system. Now, the fact that 208,000 California lawyers and the ACLU and some other groups are afraid to take them on, that's their problem. But I am not going to let the American people lose a judicial system. And I don't think the American people are going to allow themselves to lose the judicial system.
And so he stayed in jail, revealing the illegal payments that were heretofore unknown. He loudly and defiantly declared to anyone that would listen that the unconstitutional payments to the judges are unadulterated bribes. By standing up to the judges, he served as the clear and unmistakable target of the corruption. The extraordinary punishment he endured revealed the extent of how far the judges would go to protect their illegal income. While in jail, he filed an appeal after appeal and the responses from the higher courts laid bare the rotten core of corruption on each level of the justice system. By subverting or denying his appeals, the higher courts were forced to expose their complicity with the lower courts in order to keep Dr. Fine in jail. We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll explore the extent of his confinement and how it has hardened his resolution to fix the system once and for all. We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you, weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage, and it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and Part 3 of our 4-part series, The Cost of Courage, the story of Richard I. Fine. Dr. Fine was subjected to conditions in the Los Angeles County Men's Central Jail that few inmates have endured.
Well, I'm under what they call sergeant escort. So under the rules, whenever I move, I have to have a sergeant with me. And in the beginning, I also had the video camera too.
We had the opportunity to interview a former Los Angeles Sheriff's Deputy, Sergeant Richard Valdemar. Sergeant Valdemar had spent several years working in custody with the Los Angeles jails. We asked him if this was a normal policy of the jail to video record the movement of every inmate. Certainly not.
The videotaping of the transportation of important prisoners we sometimes do, but those would be especially violent and dangerous inmates.
That must be it. Was Dr. Fine especially violent or dangerous? We asked him. Would you consider yourself a physically dangerous person to others?
Absolutely not. I'm the most loving person you could ever imagine. No, I'm not physically dangerous to anybody.
Ah, but there was another reason for such meticulous concern by the sheriff deputies in jail.
Or, another option, someone who's likely to sue the County of Los Angeles, so it's a risk management decision. So that they would record everything and have evidence that they complied with all the rules and regulations. And the sergeant's presence would be because they're so worried about it that they're using a supervisor rather than a regular deputy who probably could have accomplished the same thing.
Dr. Fine knew the real reason for being given such special attention. It was the very reason he was in jail, retaliation for his impudence in accusing the court of bribery. But Dr. Fine took it in stride and even made the solitary confinement a positive aspect of his incarceration.
My gut feeling is that since Yaffe wanted to coerce me, that he probably did something to try and make my life tougher. On the other side of it, on the solitary part of it, having your own cell can be a benefit.
We asked him to share with our audience what lesson is to be learned from this dreadful experience. His answer was quite eloquent.
I think what this experience shows is that the abuse of power that is existing between the supervisors and the judges is so extensive and is so big that the viewers and that you as the people have to get back to the point of watching the government. My being in jail for 1 year and possibly longer should show you that nobody is immune from this abuse of power.
A dire warning, to be sure, and he offered himself as living proof.
What is happening here in the United States right now, with my sitting in this jail, in this orange outfit, means that the government that is taking place here with the loss of our judiciary, and that's what it is the same thing that is happening in Iran when they're throwing people in jail for protesting about an election. It's the same thing that is happening in Myanmar. If you look in today's LA Times, where you've had a repressive government in there for 30 years where people haven't voted. This is the beginning of what happens when you lose a democracy. And I'll give you a little thing. If you go back into a very interesting thing and read the end part of the Declaration of Independence, they talk about the judges being bought out by the king. And America in the beginning didn't have any judicial system because it was all being run by the king. And that's one of the reasons why we rebelled. Well, people, we're in the exact same place today. That is where we're at.
Dr. Fine advocated a peaceful rebellion, that we should resort to the ballot box, not the bullet box.
These judges are elected. These supervisors are elected. They may be trying to keep me in jail right now, and they may be trying to control you because they're controlling the system through an abuse of power. But what we've got is we have an election. You walk into your electoral place, you bring in 2 friends, and the 3 of you go in and you vote the bums out. And that is what it comes down to. And that is why I'm in here. That is why my family is willing to go through this. You know, my daughter said in an interview that my father's a very principled person. My wife and daughter are principled enough to take the sacrifice to change this system and put it back to where it's supposed to be.
He spent a year and a half of his productive life sitting in a concrete cell so that others could see the dreadful state of our current judiciary. Although he isn't asking others to make the same extraordinary sacrifice, he does want each of us to get involved and to make a difference.
While I sit in here to fight to put this system back to where it should be, that's what I'm going to ask of everyone else. Get active, do what you can, and put the system back, and let's get rid of these people that are giving the take, being on the take, get rid of the abuse of power, and let's put us back where we belong.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Are your county officials authorizing illegal payments to the judges? Are you ready to do something about it? If you are, please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number and tell us what you think at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us for the next edition, Part 4 of this series, The Cost of Courage, the Story of Richard I. Fine, where we will interview Dr. Fine in his home just days after his release from 18 long months of solitary coercive confinement. That's coming up next on Full Disclosure. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.